Welcome to CardsChat, the friendliest poker podcast in town from the world's #1 poker community. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Robbie Straczynski. Thank you so much for joining us on episode number 124 of CardsChat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. Today's guest is Leon Wheeler, the poker room manager at Resorts World Las Vegas. He's the director of poker operations there. Leon's involvement in the poker industry stretches back over 30 years. He's had a front row seat to the poker boom and bust cycle in Las Vegas, having worked with a number of top properties in the city over the years. As live poker booms once again, he's earned his way to now manage one of the top poker rooms in the city. And on this episode, we'll hear how Leon slowly but surely rose through the industry ranks and get to know a little bit more about his life away from the felt. Leon, welcome to the CardsChat Podcast.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
Cool. And, we might say pretty good friends over the last couple of years, and this is fun.
I feel like
I've been waiting to do this for a while. This is going to be a lot of fun because as much as I know about you now, through the research that I've tried to compile the questions and stuff, I was like, oh, there's some interesting nuggets there. We'll start all the way from the beginning. On your Facebook profile, it says you're from Oklahoma. So
originally Oklahoma. I was born on Fort Sill Army Base in 1970. My father was a drill sergeant at the base. I used to sell newspapers and shine shoes when I was 9, 10 years old.
Goodness.
It was quite a fun childhood in that regard.
Do you have any siblings as well? Like, what was sort of like family life? And I guess on the Air Force bases also. You said Air Force or Army base?
It was Army base, but we were stationed in a couple Air Forces bases over the years. We went to Germany. I have 2 older sisters. They're each 3 years older than each. We're each 3 years older than each other. So, so I'm 53. My sister is 56, and I got one 59.
Goodness. So you lived in Oklahoma till you were about teenager?
We came out here when I was 15.
Wow. Goodness. Right. Okay. And obviously, you attended high school over there. Las Vegas was very different back in the 80s from it is. I mean, same vibe in general, but significantly smaller, a little bit more of a small town type of feel for the residents who were there. Can you describe what it was like as a teenager in Las Vegas in the 80s?
There was 300,000 people here when I got here, 8 high schools. Now there's over 50, and we're at 2.2 or 2.3 million. It's been a crazy boom. My first idea of Las Vegas was, my parents going downtown, and I would go down there with them and walk around the casinos and downtown when I was 15.
Things were a little looser back then.
Things were a lot looser back then. There wasn't much to do for, a 15-year-old, but, I met some friends in arcades and stuff. That's how I got into poker. My first trip to the Bingo Palace, which is now Palace Station, I met a kid in the arcade, and his parents, his stepfather played poker for a living, and his mother dealt and floored in the town back in the Golden Nugget days with Eric Drake and those guys back then. And they taught me poker at the kitchen table when I was 15. I fell in love with it.
Goodness. Well, what is it that prompted your family's move to Las Vegas in the first place?
Well, economy in Oklahoma, they were looking for a better life.
Interesting. Okay. And Vegas, I mean, there's, obviously tons of places. Vegas came calling, like, your father was, like you said,
they came on Vegas. Well, he was retired. He retired in 79. They came to Vegas for a little vacation and hit like a, I don't know, 8-spot keno for like $700 and thought this was the greatest place on earth. And they came out here. They went busted a few times, and that's when I had left home when I was 16 and a half. 2 weeks after my 16th birthday, I left home and went on my own.
Wow.
They lost all their money and said, we're going to share an apartment with another family. So I said, that's all right. I'll go on my own.
As a teenager, that can't be easy.
No, I still finished high school. I was an emancipated minor. That's where you can sign your own, school notes, things of that nature. So I moved in with a friend of mine, and then we eventually picked up another friend. We rented an apartment on Sunrise Mountain and went to El Dorado and finished high school.
Goodness. Now, like my original question was like, do you now miss anything about those quote unquote simpler times in Las Vegas? But perhaps it wasn't so simple, kind of making
It
your own
was
way.
it was definitely interesting. I started working on the strip when I was right after I turned 16. I bussed tables at a place called Westward Ho. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I've heard of it, yeah.
It's actually on this property. Stardust and Westward Ho was bought out to make room for this property,
Mhm.
and so I bussed tables there. And then by 10 months, I went from washing dishes to frontline cook.
Wow.
And then I did that until I was 21.
Yeah, and that's when poker, I guess, sunk its claws a little bit more into you. You got your first dealer job at the Gold Coast.
Actually, the first job I got
Oh,
was the Maxim Open in 1991. That was a 2-week tournament, and that's where I got my big break.
huh.
And like none of the tables had rails on it. It was crazy. My first hand, half the cards went off the table. It's crazy.
Maxim, like the magazine?
Maxim, was, where the MGM is now, or
Uh,
actually no, it's the Barbary Coast. Sorry, the Cromwell
okay.
parking garage. That's where the Maxim stood.
Got it. Wow. Okay. How and why did you get into dealing? Like obviously you're 21, you're now like legal to do everything. What is it
Well,
about poker dealing that appealed to you?
well, that was just the job in the industry. I was, introduced to it when I got to town, and I played before I was 21. We, went to card room. I won't say where, but we would go into card rooms, and as long as you don't order a drink, they don't bother you.
Right.
So, so when I knew when I turned 21, that's what I was going to do. And I went to dealer school actually before I turned 21. So the day I turned 21 is when I started looking for a job. Pat Barnes gave me my first break. I turned away a lot of experienced dealers and gave me an opportunity. And then I went on to get hired at the Gold Coast. And, I was awful my first year. In fact, my first boss, you'll never make it in this business. You need to go back to school, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I just felt like, I wanted to be the best at it. So I made it where I was the best dealer I could possibly be. I was
Right.
pretty good.
Right. So, I mean, I've had the privilege or the opportunity, whatever you'd call it, to stay at the Gold Coast, but it's more in like recent years. Folks, if you don't know where that is, it's just across the street from the Rio, off the strip. When I was there, it was already long past when it had a poker room. You were there for 5 years. For those of us who never had the opportunity, what was the poker room like? How many tables? What
Well,
was the atmosphere?
it was a very popular poker room. We had daily tournaments. We had 11 tables. We had the first 1,000-player tournament in Nevada.
Oh,
It was a
wow.
limit hold'em, $125 buy-in limit hold'em. We had tables in the sports book. We had tables in the lounge. We had tables upstairs. It was crazy, and we had a limit hold'em poker tournament. That was the biggest tournament in Nevada at the time.
I can't even like imagine that in 2023, a limit hold'em that's not the WSOP going ahead and
So this
like
was probably
1,000 players.
92 or 93. I can't remember. But
Goodness,
we
yeah.
had the Gold Coast Open every year,
Right,
and
right,
we would take over the ballroom, and then we'd have big games. Cowboy Wolford, Eskimo Clark, all those guys, men the master. They would come up and play. 150, 300 limit was the big game.
right.
No limit was just the novelty at the time.
Right. Again, I've heard stories. I wasn't, around back in that day, so to speak, in the industry, of the Stardust, of the Dunes being the big rooms.
Mm,
Obviously, the Mirage opened up their
yeah.
room. What made the Gold Coast Poker Room unique and a place where people wanted to play?
Well, it was more about locals, and we had a lot of retirees that played there, and we had these $10 buy-in tournaments with $10 rebuys, and people just fired away at these things, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, not very lucrative to deal, obviously, but but they were a lot of fun. I mean, there was times where I would work 30 straight days and wouldn't put in 40 hours.
Wow.
So it was a grind. I would take my $40 envelope to across the street and run it up on a blackjack table, and then get into a 4-8 hold'em game and try to make a living.
Interesting. So I was going to ask about that. So, I mean, this is well before the moneymaker boom. You
Hmm.
saw the appeal of working at the felt as a dealer. On the playing side, did that ever occur to you, or, was that ever sort of like a plan, a thought, a hope, a dream? Hey, maybe I can play this game for a living?
Well, of course, everybody dreams of playing for a living, but I don't know if I could ever think of a harder grind than playing for a living. At the time, I had children young, so my daughter is now 30, so I had her when I was 22, and
Mhm.
I needed benefits, I needed stability, and I broke in with a lot of guys that are playing professionally now today. Mike Matasaw, we broke in together at the Gold Coast
Huh.
years ago. Then he went on to Samstown, and then he ended up buying a third of Scotty Wynn when he won the championship, and that's how he got his start.
I remember that big hug. I think, the famous,
Yeah, very famous hug.
big
Yeah,
hug over
I
there.
think he bought I think it was like $2,500 for a third of Scotty Wynn, and turned into 350,000 or whatever it was. And he never looked back.
Nice score. Well, that's
Yeah,
pretty cool. I didn't know that. That's very cool.
but he didn't have
Um,
any children, didn't raise a family, things of that nature. I had a family to raise.
sure. Well, again, you had, I think I even saw somewhere in one of your profiles that, besides going to high school, you went to and college, went to the School of Hard Knocks. And, it's pretty clear, making your own way through it and, grinding hard. You were very motivated to succeed. Your first major job there at the Gold Coast, you were there for 5 years. What would you say were some of the big lessons that you learned from that, and that, you can even still take with you till today?
Well, I mean, just I did learn a lot about poker at the Gold Coast. We used to have a straight high game there, and then we brought in high low split, and I became one of the best high low split dealers in the country, and that just really showcased my skill, which in turn led to other gigs. I was there for 5 years, but we moved that poker room to the Orleans, so that was the same poker room.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I spent
Okay.
18 years with that poker room, and
Okay.
later became assistant manager, and but I just learned all my skills from the Gold Coast to Orleans, and then I went on to work cruises with Linda and Jan,
Yep.
Linda Johnson, Jan Fisher, and Ben Lamb, or not David Lamb, and
Right.
Matt Savage was on those, and those were a lot of fun, but they weren't extremely lucrative back then. So I eventually started working for the websites. I worked for the Absolute. When we did Aruba, I did Aruba for 5 years, and then
Mm.
later went back for another tournament. Did the PCA for 13 years. Did EPT
Yep.
Monaco for 5 years. We've been all over the world, my wife and I.
Right. Yes. We'll definitely touch upon those. I noticed those very interesting places. I mean, you certainly did a lot, had your finger in a lot of pies at the time as well. I hadn't realized that, sort of the room was moved from
Yes.
Gold Coast to Orleans. What exactly does that mean? I know not all. I mean, as a player myself, also, I've been around. Why would that happen? I guess they're owned by the same owner, but why would something like that happen? And we've seen things even over the last couple of years of like consolidations of a few rooms into one main room. Like, why would something like that happen?
So they took a successful room, and they were opening a new casino, and they made a bigger poker room out of it, and they were able to design the room specifically just for tournaments, and obviously cash games too. But they just one day they just closed the room at the Gold Coast and opened it up to Orleans.
Wow.
And
Okay.
10 minutes later, they did reopen the Gold Coast, but it didn't last.
It didn't have a
Didn't
Baskin
have the same
Robbins.
appeal.
Didn't have a Baskin Robbins
Didn't
next
have
to
they did not.
it.
They had terrible mics though. That was a burger place in the Gold Coast for years.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. Um, so you worked your way up from dealer to shift manager, that sort of a thing. Already at that time, obviously, again, you're working really hard. did you sort of have goals, aspirations to keep, moving up the ladder, or were you kind of content of where you were at each stage of your career?
I really felt that I was always going to run my own room someday, but I wanted to get the right experience, and I wanted to, get the right opportunity. I felt like Resorts World was more of a destiny for me. I started
Mhm.
my career on this property many years ago, and I felt that had a cool story.
Yeah, yeah.
So, in fact, when I was with Boyd Gaming, and you know, they were planning Echelon Place, which what this property was originally designated for. They were going to open a 20 table card room, and that
Mhm.
that was my idea. I was going to run the room here at Echelon Place, and of course the recession hit and things didn't go their way, so I ended up going to Aria.
Right, right. But now you get to run a 30 plus table room there. So it's even
Yes,
more tables there. So that's cool.
yes.
That's
Mm,
cool. So while you were at the Orleans, like you said, 18 years total, 1991 to 2009, the poker boom happened. What
mm.
was that like? I mean, obviously it happened all over the world, but of course, Las Vegas and plus the city's population got bigger, more tourists are coming to the city. You kind of had a front row seat to it, an interesting place. What was it like from your perspective, the poker boom, like those 2003 to 2009?
Well, I tell you, before the moneymaker effect, it was you could shoot a cannon through these card rooms, and they were just, it just whatever hot spot was happening at the time. Gold Coast would always kind of survived in the Orleans. They had always had a pretty good product, especially with the high low split they have there, and so it was surprising to see them survive over the years.
Mhm.
You know, Places did come and go. Card rooms open and close all the time, but then the moneymaker effect happened, and then it just it opened up, and then No Limit just took over.
Right. Oh, okay. So, and was that like, how did that affect or have any sort of consequences on the type of work you were doing? What sort of adjustments were you making on the fly when you start seeing just hordes of people coming in and wanting to play this game they saw on TV?
Yeah, well, you had to learn how to really handle a No Limit game. It is quite a bit different. I always enjoyed dealing a 2040 limit hold'em game, and you ask any dealer, they can make a good living off 2040 limit hold'em. And of course, No Limit is a bit different. The action's a lot slower, and it's you have to adjust to those sort of things.
Mhm. Interesting. Okay. You had mentioned that you started working with the rooms, Absolute over there in Aruba, and you work with Poker Stars and their live events as well. How do opportunities like that come around? Were you looking, or they found you based on, the fact you already had decade and a half worth of experience?
Well, I think they found me. I did have a pretty good reputation with being an excellent dealer, and I'd always dealt final tables, not necessarily World Series. I didn't work a whole lot for the World Series, but like for the World Poker Tour, I did work final tables for them. And then we had originally started the Tournament of Champions at the Orleans, and I dealt all the final tables there. And then
That was that Mike
people,
Sexton's event?
it was,
Yeah.
and I'm always said that if it wasn't for the Tournament of Champions, there might not be a WPT.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So I mean that I think I even saw this like a 45-minute video. Like that whole thing was televised. You see like young Phil Ivey, who wasn't yet 21 years old, standing on the rail. What do you
Yeah.
remember about the Tournament of Champions?
Well, I mean, if you want to check out that video, check out the final tables. You'll see some young kid pitching cards. I had a pretty good pitch.
That's true.
I took I did take my craft very seriously. So anytime I approach a final table, I study chip stacks, and make sure I'm sharp as can be.
Sure. I don't know which order to go in, but you did mention, and you focus on your craft. You mentioned Linda Johnson and Jan Fisher, good mutual friends of ours. How you working on card player cruises as well? They had told me just last year. They said, from when we saw Leon, he till today had the fastest hands we've ever seen as far as like dealing like that. So more credit
I
to
did
you.
have very quick hands, and I don't know. I just enjoyed being excellent at it. So, it was it was very, very, very cool to be
So,
noticed.
mhm. So the dealing, poker room managers, like it's not necessarily your conventional 9 to 5. Lots of folks here, we love playing poker recreationally, serious recreational. Professionals obviously make their own schedule. When you're a
Yeah.
dealer or shift manager, you're working shifts, and often you do take on multiple jobs, or you switch from like a morning shift to the graveyard shift to the swing shift, and there's this dual rate stuff, which I'm not 100% sure I completely understand. Like you're doing kind of like both jobs at different times, like the managing and the dealing. So I don't quite understand one sort of thing on the timeline. So you were simultaneously having your regular job in the Orleans, in Las Vegas, but also when the big live events came in, the islands on, in Monte Carlo, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Then you just sort of took a break and did that.
Well, I mean, I always sold this to my home casino that it's good networking, and it is. I met a lot of good friends over in Europe when I worked over there. So they allowed me to go and work these events, which I still have friends today
Mhm.
that I know that come over here and see me every time for the World Series. Every time the World Series is in town, they come and say hello. And I'd met them 15 years ago in the
Sure.
Bahamas or in Monaco.
Sure. A lot of folks have only played poker in the United States.
Mhm.
What's the difference, at least from your side of the felt, working those events overseas, in Europe, an online poker operated event, like you were more in the cash game side of things. So
Yeah, I
what
ran all the
what are the
cash games.
practical differences?
Well, cost for one. When they first recruited me to run the cash games in Monaco, they sent me over the rakes, like the rake structures. And I'm looking at these rake structures. I'm like, oh my God, they're not going to get anybody to play this. I mean, they were taking 15 euro a hand for a 2-5 game. And
Yep.
just think about that for a second.
Oh,
15 euro a
I've
hand
played in
for
games
a
like
two
those.
five game.
Sure. Yeah.
Insane. I'm like, there's never going to be enough players to play this. And,
Mhm.
day one, we opened up 48 games, no problem. People standing in line.
Right.
We were taking 25 euro a hand for a 5-10 game. And we made over €1 million in 10 days
Right.
for Poker Stars. And turns out that was the cheapest rate in Europe.
Exactly. So, and this is something, I mean, again, like I said, I've been fortunate to play in Europe, in the United States, and there's a major difference there. From your perspective, having worked it, having seen it, why is that the case that the rake tends to be so much lower in the United States than in Europe? And even though it's higher in Europe, nonetheless, like you said, people are still lining up to play. How is it that it works
Well,
there?
the biggest difference is competition. The market here in Vegas is extremely competitive. So everybody has to, stay cheap and give away free drinks and make it affordable for the players to play here on a daily basis. You go to
Mhm.
Europe, that's one card room, especially most of Europe, they don't have set card rooms. They're mostly festivals that follow from place to place. I mean, they
Mhm.
do have some, but it's typically a festival setting,
Mhm.
and they can get that kind of high rate, and
Right.
their gaming tax is a lot higher.
Right. Right. Okay. Interesting. Um, Also, this is not a question I had planned, but again, you have a unique perspective having, been around and done a lot. Tipping culture is also very different from country to country, especially,
Yes, it
Europe
is.
versus. So what can you explain from your experience and perhaps clue people into it's not always like it, like you're used to here in the States?
Well, I mean, in those events in Europe, we'd have to take a lot of amount to pay the staff. So it's less of a tipping culture over there in Europe, and you'll find that in restaurants also. They pay their employees higher, and they just aren't expected the tip, even though you know the U.S. customers of theirs still tip.
Right, out of
It's just
habit.
not as customary.
Right. Okay. And was that something sort of difficult for you to sort of get used to each time of like, hey, they're not still, toking me a buck here and there?
Well, in Monaco, we started taking €1 a hand just for the staff. So
Okay.
they were
That
we
helps.
forced them to tip $1, yeah, and then they didn't even notice. But we
Okay.
took a €1 every hand for every hand played, and that went to the staff. And then, of course, on our tournaments, we take a set fee, 3% or whatever it is.
Sure. Is that also, I mean, again, like the difference in competition, is that also why we don't tend to see, as many promotions, bad beat jackpots, aces cracked, Windsor rack kind of thing in the European rooms?
Correct. I mean, because then you have to take more money off the table. I mean, it's anytime you have these promotions, people don't understand where the money comes from. It comes from the table.
Right. Right.
And they're already taking a big chunk with rake.
Mhm.
It's certainly not as popular in the Europe market.
Sure. Okay, and how about on the high seas themselves? I've never been fortunate enough yet to go on a card player cruise, but what's unique about dealing in a poker room on a cruise ship?
Well, they're a lot of fun. They're more of a social atmosphere. My wife and I now we just go as customers now, and we just enjoy ourselves. We just hang out with 300 people for a week, and we all get together in the evenings and play cards, or in the mornings and play cards. When the ship's in the shore, we all get off the ship and go see the whatever spot we're in.
Mhm. Is that
So it's
something you
more
were doing when
social.
you were working on the ships as well?
Well, when you're working the cruises, you're just like a passenger. So you're a subcontractor. You're not really a employee of the cruise ship, but you're an employee of Card Player Cruises or whatever
Right.
cruise line you're on.
Sure.
So when you're at sea, you're dealing and you take time off. You work one shift a day, just like you would a regular job.
Nice. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was a blast. It was a blast.
Cool. So, okay, in poker, we're supposed to shift gears every once in a while, throw a little curveball. So we're not going to throw a curveball or anything, but we will switch gears. You have mentioned your wife, Amanda. You mentioned that you had kids already. So let's talk a little bit about family. First of all, as far as I know, Amanda, she does work in the gaming industry as well. How did the two of you meet?
She goes back and forth from poker to table games over the years, and so at the time when we met, she was dealing poker at the time, and her first night at work at the Orleans, she happened to be following me. And every time she would come to the table to tap me out, she would say, "Last hand, honey." And
Leave
half
her
an
hand
hour
there a
later,
little
next
longer.
yeah, half an hour later, the next table, she'd say, "Half last hand, sweetie."
Oh.
And so finally, when I was getting out of the table, I said, "You keep this up, I'm gonna have to buy you a drink." And she said, "Okay," and the rest is history.
Oh, that's adorable. That's really sweet. And how long have you
We
been married now?
22 years.
Wonderful. Knock on wood. That's beautiful.
We
And
have a really good love affair. It's really a special story.
beautiful. And you've told me in the past also, and you said it was okay to ask if you'd rather not talk about it, it's fine, but
Abs-
whatever you feel comfortable sharing. You said, obviously a very proud father, 4 kids all together, and you're also a brand new grandpa. So what's
mm.
dad life and grandpa life like?
Well, being a grandparent is just absolutely remarkable, and we're so ecstatic. Jackson, he's turned 5 months the other day, and he's just the most adorable thing you ever want to imagine. I can't wait to have more grandkids. But being a father, I just spend my whole life just trying to be a great role model to my kids. All my kids are successful. I don't have anybody still living at home or a drug addict or or whatever. They're all very successful, and we're very blessed. And my wife ran a tight ship at home, so she kept them in line.
That's good. Is that tough? I mean, Las Vegas is a very unique city, at least from perspective of someone who, most of us out here, we go there as a place, a vacation destination, or we even go multiple times a year. It's different when you live there. Was that, did that sort of come into play as far as raising a family and also literally working in the casinos? Was that, something unique?
Well, that's the first thing people say is, "Oh, how could you possibly raise a family in Las Vegas?" And outside of the gaming industry, we're a regular community. We go to school, we go to work, I go to we go to church. I don't go to church as much as I should probably, but you know, it's whatever you put into it.
Hmm.
So you get out of it whatever you put into it, I guess I'm trying to say. Like we would work late in the swing shift, and we're there at every football game, every baseball game, every cheer competition,
Hmm.
regardless if we're with 2 hours sleep, doesn't matter.
That's really beautiful.
We're always there. Like my boys were always in sports, and the girls were in cheer.
Nice.
Our first time we went to state, we beat Gorman. Our kids went to Palo Verde, so that was it's a big rivalry here. So when
Hmm.
we beat Gorman in 2010, we went to state when our oldest daughter was a varsity cheerleader. So we went. That was fun.
Nice. Well, that's just great. It's also, so many of us, we have this love for poker, even if we're not working in it, always want to kind of be there and, with what's going on. And it's a struggle, for the regular folks who aren't just, full-time professionals, or even those who are, to have that work-life balance. It seems like it's something you worked very, very hard to try and achieve, and now you're reaping the fruits of that labor. So that's a beautiful thing.
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Back to poker, switch gears back again. You mentioned you had worked at Aria and at Win for both of those properties, about 5.5 years at each. That kind of covers sort of like the 2010s period of your career. You were a shift manager at both properties. At this point already you had, quite a lot of experience under your belt. But those names, Aria, Win, premier properties, probably among the top poker rooms in the world. What sort of lessons did you learn specifically working at those two properties over the years?
Well, I mean, starting at Aria, that's when I really got exposed to what high limit poker is all about, and I learned a lot and made a lifelong contacts working with that group over there.
Hmm.
And we had a really spectacular group of people that came together, and started hosting high stakes games, and with the starting of the high roller bowl, and super nosebleed cash games, gave me a lot of experience, and opened my eyes to a whole nother segment of this poker community.
Sure. Were you involved sort of at that stage in like the decision making to try and bring those players and start those games, or was that something, more of like a top level decision? This is the market we want to cater to.
There was more of more of the, like Adam Altwies, he was our director at the time, and he came from Bellagio, so that was the goal, was to make this another Bellagio, to where we have the high stakes games.
Okay.
So it was, I didn't really bring it in, but I certainly did my part in certainly taking care of these people.
Sure. And obviously, you became incredibly well regarded as a top professional in your field over that decade. I mean, it's one thing, it's like the Cal Ripken thing. You just sort of like show up to work every day. But besides that, there's got to be maybe like a special sauce. How does it happen that someone working in the industry gets to earn the trust and the respect of the players?
Well, I just feel that being a good ambassador of this industry is extremely important, and having your morals and ethics in the right places. So I gain the trust of these high limit players, and they trust me with their money, and they trust me with their gaming decisions that we have to make in these spots.
That's
So I think it's all about gaining the trust of these guys.
Mhm. Okay, interesting. On LinkedIn, you have a quote there. You describe one of your traits as someone who I'll quote here, cultivates a company culture in which staff members feel comfortable voicing questions and concerns, as well as contributing new ideas that drive company growth. So I'm wondering if you can point to any particular examples of that happening, specifically team members of yours or players suggesting something that you then took and were able to sort of like help turn into an idea or an enhanced experience for the players or for the room.
Well, I don't know if I know of anything in particular. I just think that quote just simply says that we're for the employee as well as the guest. I feel like I work for the employee as well as our customers, and I'm an open book, and this kind of thing doesn't run itself, and I'm just the guy in charge. But there's several people behind the scenes that give ideas, and which makes us successful in Aria. Same with Wen, and we're taking that over here to the resorts world.
Nice. Okay, good answer. All right, well, folks, if you're just listening, you don't see, but Leon is sitting in a very special area of the Resorts World poker room. It's time to start talking about Resorts World. It is the newest poker room in Las Vegas. About a year after you began working there, you were there right from the beginning. Upon the departure of the beloved Gary Hager, who took some time off, you became the director of poker operations. It's a role, as you said, you knew you were destined to have someday to run your own poker room. And it's something that for the very first time after, a 30-plus-year career that we've gone through, it's abundantly clear you worked very hard to get every opportunity you've gotten. What did it mean to you to finally get the nod?
Well, it meant a lot, and Gary was a big part of that, and he had entrusted me in turning the reins over, and very flattered and nervous in that same regard. It's a big step, and I knew that it was always going to be the case. Just when it actually comes, you're like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna be? Am I gonna be successful? All these people are relying on me, and Gary had a lot of faith in me, and I learned a lot from Gary, and I owe him greatly.
And that's very humble, beautiful. Now that you're like, there's a saying in Hebrew, what you see from here is not what you see from there. Do you have any sort of different perspective now in these shoes that you're filling?
Well, yes. It's before, when you're a shift manager, you're running 8 hours of a poker room, and you're still on after 8 hours as well, but not nearly as much. Now I'm working 7 days a week, and even my time off I'm always looking at Poker Atlas or answering emails, or when any of the big guys call, I have to pick it up. So it's a lot more of a responsibility.
Right.
So
Okay. Interesting. When Resorts World opened, you mentioned about Poker Atlas. It was a very notable thing. The newest poker room in the city, big 30-plus table room. You decided to adopt Poker Atlas as your chosen software. What do you like? I just have to mention also, folks who haven't heard it or listened to it, in episode 121, we had John Friedberg, the founder of Poker Atlas, and I know he plays in your room regularly. Why did you choose Poker Atlas, and how do you feel it benefits your room?
Well, Gary had used Poker Atlas in Boston, and he opened Encore Boston with Poker Atlas, and he realized it's a far superior product. And I had never worked with Atlas before, but I tell you, I don't think I could ever go back to working with Bravo at this point.
Okay.
Yes, we do have it. It does come with its challenges, being, it doesn't dominate this market just yet,
Right.
but I do feel it's coming. And, the Win is going to be taking on Poker Atlas soon enough after the World Series. And once they become online, that's a big player. And we're hoping other places follow. It's hard to describe, the effort that the Poker Atlas team puts into their product, and the lack thereof of the other company. I don't want to bash anybody, obviously,
Right.
but they don't spend their research and development on the enhancement of poker. It's not as profitable for them. They're a table games company that has poker software, basically.
Right. Well, it's good. When you work for something you want it badly enough, then people will take notice and rooms will adopt your software and your product. I totally get it. Obviously it's a team effort to make Resorts World the wonderful poker room it is, but leadership does start with the top. With so many great poker rooms in the city to choose from, many of which we've mentioned over the course of the show. How do you feel Resorts World stands out? And I guess I want to ask, what type of poker player are you hoping walks into the room and takes a seat?
Well, I feel we stand out because we have the best staff, in my opinion, in the city and probably in the country. Our dealers are hands down the best in the city. We spread a lot of mixed games here, and we feel that that's the cornerstone of our business. Obviously, we want to get more low limit, but that will come in time. These mixed players are all seasoned players, and they have followings. So we want their followings to come here. And you can ask any of these high limit guys when they play at other places that the dealers here are just a top notch, and we feel we keep them prepared for all the changes and the evolution of the mixed games that they constantly change, and we're trying to stay on top of that.
Cool. Okay. Well, I can definitely, obviously Leon's going to say good things about his room, but as someone who, has been there for many, many days, many, many hours, it is my personal also favorite room in the city. And again, not just saying that because Leon's here. And of course, as a mixed game player and lover, my favorite place to play. And couldn't agree with you more about the staff. Most wonderful people, great human beings. You had mentioned a couple of times about the high roller scene. Again, I mentioned you're sitting in a special part of the room. Obviously, we want to respect the privacy of the players. But the high roller scene, the cash games is something that a lot of people are curious about. Without revealing something that the players would feel uncomfortable. So can you describe sort of what goes on as far as the high roller scene within the Resorts World Poker?
Well, we spread a 3-600 game 5-6 days a week. Those guys feel comfortable with us. We do offer a cheaper rate. We offer butler service, and we offer good a good staff. So I feel like we can offer more than our competition in that regard.
Okay, that's fair. Good pitch. One last question from me before we move into the community questions. The Cards Chat folks, forum members, wanted to ask you a bunch of stuff also. But last question for me is, Leon, obviously we've been talking for a while, and it's abundantly clear you're in a, thank goodness you're in a great place in your career, in your life. Have you given any thought to what you want the next few years to look like professionally and specifically at the helm of Resorts World? For example, if I just sort of handed you a magic wand, tell us, what would you like to see?
Well, I certainly would love to see more traffic on this end of the strip, and I do feel it's coming, which in turn will give us more traffic in the poker room. But I want to, we want to make our mark in the poker community, and I think we're on the right track. This is not an easy thing to do. It's a work in progress. It's taken a lot of some of the other clubs a long time to get to where they're at. And we know that it's not going to be easy, and we're just going to continue to do what we're doing, and hopefully, we become greatly successful.
The old adage, if you build it, they will come. And I will
That's right.
certainly do what I can to, to say here, here. I personally think you're doing a great job, and for whatever that means. But I personally think more people ought to patronize the room, and hopefully from what your dreams will come true, that more people will keep on coming through those doors. Folks, this is the segment of the show where we now turn to you guys, our Cards Chat community, to see what questions you wanted to ask our guests. We have a dedicated thread on the Cards Chat forums for this. So as we announce who our future guests will be, please be sure to send in your questions. Our first forum question comes from Love Poker. Thanks for submitting this one. Who asks, Leon, a lot of us talk about poker's future here in the forums, and we wonder, how are things going in the live game world? Because a lot of us just play online. How are casinos in Las Vegas doing with live poker, and are they back to where we were before COVID?
I do feel we're on our way back to where we were before COVID. I mean, before COVID, things were going really well. COVID certainly put a wrench in the gears, but I think that people miss the social aspect of poker, and I think that's what we're going back to. And I believe that's extremely important. This is an entertainment still. It does provide a living for a lot of people, but bottom line, this still is an entertainment, and we have to go back to that and to show people a good time when they're here, and I think that's important.
Burma Joga has this question for you. I don't even know if you can encapsulate it in just one question. What is your main responsibility during a tournament that is being held at resorts?
Well, I don't really have a tournament director, so when
Okay,
I put on a lot of hats here, so my main responsibility is to make sure the tournament runs smoothly and make sure I have all the pieces in place and that my staff is prepared to run a successful event. No one wants to look bad during a tournament, so we try to think of every possible thing that can go wrong, and we try to manage the expectations of our guests and to put out a good product.
nice. Okay. Are we looking? Well, that's probably not. But hopefully, we will see someone fill those shoes and give you a little bit more more time to focus on other stuff as well.
I got to
Uh,
generate more revenue before I can get some
There
more
you
help.
go. Okay, cool. Another question from Burma Joga. I like this one. Not necessarily resourceful, but over the course of your career, have you ever seen or witnessed anyone cheat in a cash game or tournament? And how did you deal with it, or how was that dealt with, if so?
Well, I tell you, if there's money in it, there's somebody trying to cheat. We have over my career several times people have tried to cheat
Wow.
from, especially in Europe. There's a lot of teams in Europe where they have spotters and signalers, and people trying to take tournament chips out of play and then
Hmm.
reintroduce them. We catch them and we ban them for life,
Wow.
and we tell our
Okay.
neighbors about them.
Yeah.
That's
One strike
something we take
policy.
very seriously. One strike. You cannot cheat in this business and think you can play somewhere else. I'm
Right.
certainly going to tell all my friends about it.
Right. And one thing, if I recall correctly, I remember when I first came to the room, Gary had told me, just as far as like an extra security measure, a lot of poker rooms, they just have like those RFID chips only in like the high, whatever, like 5K, like the flags and the cranberries, but like you guys have
Yeah.
it even in the
Mhm.
$1 chips.
Every chip, every chip is RFID. They have some great technology in table games. They can, the somebody can rainbow a bet on a blackjack spot and it can tell you exactly what the bet is. And if it's a snapper, they know exactly the payout. It's an amazing system.
Yeah, that's
This
pretty
is this
cool.
place has got some of the best technology. I'll tell you that. But
Hmm.
yeah, every chip is RFID'd, and we don't have a problem with counterfeiting here.
Right. Well, that's a good thing. Jamil has this question. How do you juggle things as far as room management when there's more than one tournament running in your room simultaneously? Good question.
That is a good question. Well, we have four different chipsets, so we can run four different tournaments at the same time. So I just put them in separate areas of the room. With Poker Atlas, it's extremely easy. I can it's really seamless.
Cool. Okay. Chica Bonita has a question I've never heard asked before, so I like it. It's a good opportunity to talk about the property as a whole. Please tell us, Leon, if the poker room and the hotel or the resort are equipped with the necessary infrastructure to receive people with disabilities, and if so, can you talk about it a little bit?
Well, we keep up to the ADA standards. There absolutely this place is the latest technologies in every aspect. So yes, this place is definitely set up for the disability.
Okay. There's another question here. I mean, you can choose where you'd like to go with it, and not to put you on the spot, but Chica Bonita also wants to know, please tell us about the most scandalous, romantic, dangerous, funny, or shocking situation that you have had to face in your work at Resorts World thus far.
That
We'll
is
give
an
you a
interesting
clock on that one.
question.
It's fine. So
Hmm, I'm not quite sure. It's been pretty smooth here at Resort World. I do have a story of a shocking decision I had to make in Europe.
go for it. Let's hear it.
Well, over there, the room shuts down and they run a lot of 5 card PLO, and
Okay.
when they get the last hand of the night, players hop from table to table, right? So this guy sits down, makes this game 8-handed. They deal the cards 8-handed, and then 3 people get all the money in, and they want to run 2 boards. Well, there's not enough cards left for 2 boards,
Right.
so the pot was about 90,000 euro and three or four different side pots. And then of course the guy that's going to scoop everything is an American. And I'm dealing with Italian and French and then the American, and they think nothing's on the up and up because the American's going to win. And I have to decide what to do the second board. So I get everybody to agree to one burn and put 5 cards out. Of course, when the French and the Italian didn't win, then all hell broke loose. So I put my best actor hat on, and you took pictures of all the hands and sent them on their way. And I wanted the tournament director to make the decision the next day when there was 1,000 people in the room as opposed to 20. It was very sketchy situation.
Interesting.
Very sketchy situation. Feared for our safety, to be honest.
Wow. Goodness.
It was just me and a couple of staff members and angry mob.
Can I just ask, what was the decision the following day? Did they confirm your ruling?
Yes, they confirmed my ruling and told these guys the bad news. And they just easier to accept when there's 1,000 people in the room as opposed to 20.
Right. Wow. Okay.
That was the most sketchy ruling that ever, scandalous ruling ever happened.
That is a tough one. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Acid Burn FX always asks some creative questions. What is the one thing that you wish was different about poker, and why?
Well, I think that the promotions in poker really kind of hurt it. I wish that all card rooms didn't have to put promotions out, but I understand why they do it. And I believe that promotions hurts the play of poker, and I wish that wasn't a part of it.
That's interesting. So I'm going to push back a little bit as a player. I'm wondering why you say that, because for someone, who like me, who'll go ahead and visit a few times a year, you hear about a cool bad beat jackpot, or this room's giving, I don't know, if you make a 7-card straight flush with, all the cards on, or something like that. Like, it's cool. And maybe it's, perhaps a bit gimmicky, but it's like, oh, that might bring some people to the room. So why would you say that you think it hurts poker?
It does bring people to the room. I believe though, once you have these high hands or high jackpots, all you get is jackpot chasers, and it hurts the action.
Okay.
People are just waiting for the 4 of a kind to come, and to lose with a 4 of a kind takes forever.
Right.
So you get everybody waiting around.
Okay.
When you don't have that, you just get straight poker, and that's what I enjoy the most about it.
Cool. Okay. Good rebuttal. I like that. Takis30, thank you. It's a name I haven't seen before. Thanks for submitting this question. Wants to know, Leon, how's the poker scene today different from the beginning of your career? Can you tell us some of the biggest changes that you've witnessed, I guess over the last couple decades?
Well, the biggest change is No Limit. I mean, No Limit was just a novelty back then. And, a room that had a 10-20 game, that was the big game. You had your 4-8 limit or a 2-4 limit, and then you had the 10-20, which was the big game.
Right. And
now, after the poker boom, it was No Limit. Now you're having just absolute nosebleed No Limit games, and people that have made millions and millions of dollars on No Limit. It's just not done in limited.
Right.
Like No Limit.
Well, I mean, since you mentioned it, I'll ask as well. I'll follow up. It's not too difficult, I suppose, to get used to, when you just enter the industry and you see amounts. Okay, 10-20, what's a big pot there? $1,000, something like that. And then
$1,000 is a massive pot.
Right, exactly. So, and then all of this money starts flowing in, and you as a dealer sitting there, and you're dealing with chips where the chips alone are worth $1,000, $5,000. How does one become desensitized to the money and remain focused on running things and not think about, oh well, that's a down payment on a car kind of a thing?
That's the biggest challenge that people have when they're in this business is they're dealing with the amounts that are just astronomical to them. We're normal regular people, and you're dealing like we have a 501,000 game that plays pretty throughout the year.
Wow.
And there's over $1 million on the table. It's just a crazy amount of money. We had that Nick Airball, Matt Berkey heads up game that had a lot of money on the table. I think you just have to, train yourself that it's a 10-20 game with a lot of zeros. That's all.
Okay. Just push the chips to this person or that person.
Push the chips. It's all chips. It's all relative.
Right. Not just Sami, another name. Maybe I've seen it once. So thanks for submitting this question. I really like this question a lot because good clue into how things really work. I always hear, says not just Sammy, that casinos don't really value poker or poker players as much because they don't, quote, make enough money in the poker industry, and that they only have poker rooms in order to attract as many people as they can. From your experience, is that true?
Well, I mean, anybody can do the math. No, they don't make a whole lot of money on poker players, but it is in the room, just like a Katy Perry show. It's not going to make a ton of money. We got to pay the artist a lot of money, but it gets the people in the casino to spend money at restaurants, to spend money at table games, to spend money at slots. So yes, it's true that there's not a whole lot of money. The profit margin is very thin.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that ancillary spend that the customer spends. The husband or wife that brings their spouse to the casino to play other things, or the person itself that plays table games or goes to a show or spends $1,000 at a restaurant.
Right.
That's why there's these all these high-end restaurants and high-end shows, and the gaming aspect up is a lot less than it used to be.
Very interesting. That's some fascinating information there for a lot of people who aren't aware of it. Aguero Cruz has an interesting question. Just, I guess, matter of factly, I would love to play at Resorts World next time I travel to Las Vegas. They say, do you guys have any plans of having tournaments with buy-ins of lower than $160 per event, or a low stakes series?
So 160 is probably the lowest we're going to go, because we don't want to take our percentage to be higher than 18%. Like we don't want to take a lot of money off the tournament.
Right.
The lower you go, the less money you make off of it, and the higher the percentage that we're going to take. So
right.
We are going to have poker series. We are gearing for the lower player. So the $200 to $500 range is geared for the lower player. They're just not, like I said before, the profit margin isn't great. So we have to cover expenses and try to bring people in,
I think it's so
but we do have some things in the works.
I think it's so important to understand that sort of a thing, because folks like us players, we think, okay, what do we got in our bankroll? What's our disposable? Like, what can we spend? But it's important to sort of understand this is not even like a profit grab, but it's just a matter of like, there's X's and O's involved, and it's important to understand that side of the equation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
Absolutely.
Zoro222, I like this one. How many decks of playing cards, favorite spade playing cards, I should say, does the Resorts World Poker Room use in any given month or year?
So I just ordered 1,000 setups, and that'll last me probably a year and 2 or 3 months. So with the use of the shuffle machines, that they put wear and tear on the cards. We don't have to change them like table games do, but our decks are a lot more expensive than theirs are also. Right. So I would say we'll probably use 700 decks in a year.
Interesting.
700 setups, so 1,400 decks.
I remember growing up as a kid, when I was in LA, I used to go to Vegas with my family 4 times a year or so. And at the time, you used to see like these decks of cards that all of a sudden they had like a marking on the left side or a hole punched in the middle. What do you guys do with your cards after you stop using them?
We destroy them. We don't give them away. So we take them out of play and have them destroyed.
Okay, interesting. Fast One has this question. What's your favorite poker variant, Liam?
A favorite poker variant?
Yeah.
I like 8 or better stud. That's nice. A game I was raised on, and it is a dying game, but you don't find it by itself anymore. But that's my favorite game. My favorite game to deal, my favorite game to play.
Nice. Okay, cool. I'll mention this, a question I forgot to ask you. It's just as far as your own playing. I did look at your Hendon Mob. You got a Hendon Mob there, almost 50K in winnings going back to 1998. You got about a dozen results there. No limit hold tournaments, interestingly. When did you decide to play a tournament or to go play cash? Sort of, what what makes you decide, okay, I'm going to go and play a tournament today? Or, like, do you sort of just get the itch? Or like, how do you decide how often you're going to play?
Well, it's basically what disposable time I have.
Mm,
So I don't get to play at tournaments as much anymore. I do enjoy them. I did have some success at employee event for years. I took second, I think it was 01, and I took a chop first 2 years later. Didn't win the bracelet, but it was a good experience. And nowadays you get involved into a tournament, especially a big one. It's take you 3 or 4 days.
right.
I just don't have I just don't have that kind of time to sit around in a tournament.
Sure. What else do you do in your downtime to decompress?
Play golf.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Love to
Favorite
play golf. My
course?
wife and I play golf. Highland Falls, I think, out here is my favorite course. There's
Nice.
some nice and expensive ones. I mean, obviously, like Wolf Creek and Mesquite. I would love to play that every week, but I'm not going to pay $300 a week to play golf.
Okay, it's good to get out,
Wait,
especially when you're indoors at all times. It's good to get out and see some nature on the golf course. Three more question askers we've got here. Levart has a marketing question. In your opinion, Leon, what is the best way for a new poker room to market itself?
well, in years past, you'd always want to buy a page in Card Player magazine, but nowadays it's all about social media.
Hmm.
Twitter's the what everybody's on Twitter, and everybody finds out about what you're doing on Twitter. So I post multiple times a day on Twitter from our account. So if you want to follow us, it's RWLV Poker Room on Twitter.
Okay, that's good. Always good to be where the people are. Nasty Bent Gorilla. Good questions here. You mentioned one. Okay, what steps do you take to promote responsible gambling and prevent problem gambling within your poker room? Good question. Important question.
Well, we follow all the responsible gaming guidelines that the gaming control sets out for us. We have pamphlets at the cage, pamphlets at the ATM machines, pamphlets at the sportsbook machine. But outside of that, we kind of keep an eye on our guests. If they're doing a 48-hour session, we don't want them to stay that long and overdo their sessions.
Sure.
But we just keep an eye on people.
Good. It's important to look out for everyone.
Sure.
Last question from Crystals. You have hosted a number of unique events. This is their wording, not mine. The Card Player Lifestyle Mixed Game Series, Zach's Guinness World Record for the longest cash game session, and most recently, the Matt Berkey versus Nick Airball heads-up match. Why does Resorts World seem to be so open to these types of events? And what would you look to be involved with in the future if opportunities came about?
Well, I mean, like I said, I believe these are marketing opportunities, and they're unique, and they get people start talking about them. The Card Player Lifestyle event was great. Everybody loves Robbie, and
Thank you.
they pay attention when he's around, and a lot of influential people come through here just to say hello to him.
He's a very
And it's good
handsome
to have.
guy, I heard.
I heard that too.
Thank you.
It's
That's very kind. Thank
it's
you.
good to have these kind of things in the room. The Nick Airball Matt Berkey game. I gained over 1,200 Twitter followers in one day just having that game.
Wow, that's a big one.
It's a big one, and people like I wouldn't say controversy, but there's some heated discussions between the two over the
Sure.
course of time, and they decided to settle it on the felt here at Resort World, and we were honored to have them. They
Goodness.
were both
Wow.
gentlemen, and I hope they come back.
Nice. Well, everyone, I want to thank you very much for sending in your questions for Leon Wheeler. And again, just a friendly reminder to all of you out there in the Cards Chat community, we'd love to see you submit your questions for our future podcast guests in the dedicated thread in the forums. Guys, please be sure to give us a good review on iTunes and spread the word via your social media channels if you like the show. And I will also add, folks, if you like what you've heard and you want to meet Leon in person and check out the Resorts World Poker Room for yourself, please join me there for my 5th Card Player Lifestyle Mixed Game Festival. It's going to happen pretty soon after this episode gets released. We'd love to see you. Leon, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to tell the Card Chat?
Well, I just would like to say that Resort World Poker Room is an up and coming poker room, and please do yourself a favor and come check out our property and our poker room. You won't be disappointed, and if you do come by, make sure you say hello.
Nice, beautiful, and straight shooter. Love it. It's been absolute pleasure getting to speak with you and getting to know you a little better, Leon. Thank you all for tuning in once again to another episode of the CardsChat Podcast. I'm Robbie Straczynski. You can follow me on Twitter at CardPlayerLife. I wish you all a wonderful CardsChat, the friendliest poker podcast in town from the world's #1 poker community.